All right. The top story tonight, and what should be everywhere in Canada, but is not, is the fact that the Canadian government is going to be building literal internment camps, or concentration camps, whatever you want to call them, or federal quarantine/isolation sites. Ooh, here they are. So you can see, this is the government of Canada. This isn't like a QAnon Twitter account with 3,700 followers saying, big deals coming, no. This is the Canadian federal government talking about needing service providers for federal quarantine isolation sites. So if you want to bid on a contract to help arrest and detain your fellow Canadians, you know, bidding's open for another 5 days, guys. So if you really want to be part of this nonsense, feel free. All right. It's hard to break this one down in a way that isn't so obvious. I mean, I've been told that the closest I'm allowed to get to swearing at this studio is "what the heck." So whenever you hear me say "what the heck," just substitute that in with an F-bomb. And if you can do me a favor and just find your children and just make sure they know that I am swearing. So just swear at your kids, or call up your priest or pastor or rabbi, imam, you know, astrology professor, whoever it is you pray to, and just, if you can call them up and drop a couple of swears on my behalf, I greatly appreciate that, because this is a big what the heck is going on here with the federal government. Know what's going on? They're building federal quarantine/isolation sites to deal with COVID-19. There is so much to unpack here. Now, where do we start? Do we start with the fact that the COVID numbers and the misrepresentations of them, and the fact that testing has gone up 800%, but positive cases have gone up 25%, which is a pretty reasonable increase if you increase testing by 800%. So, I mean, the thing there is, if the testing goes up times 8, but the cases only go up by 2.5, that's a pretty decent, that kind of means it's stable. Okay, so if we're looking at the data and the best way to deal with this, let's listen, right? Let's listen to the expert, listen to the scientists, right? The National Post the other day finally ran an article showing a model that says that strict lockdowns will end up killing more people than they save, and using the logic that I outlined on a video in early May. And what they said we should be doing is what I said we should have been doing from the start is, we should have been letting the low-risk population venture outside. So at the beginning, when we didn't know what's going on, lockdown, 14 days to flatten the curve, we were all behind that. I did the videos, we don't need to go over that. But once we learned that this virus was not killing young people, that if you are under the age of 30, you're more likely to be killed by a strike of lightning than the coronavirus, right? 99.999% survival rate. You know, the old people it's killing, they still have like a 97% survival rate. So the real thing we should have been doing is the push towards herd immunity, because this virus was not deadly. If it was killing 20% of people, I'd be all for this, right? There'd be bodies on the streets. But because it was 0.0000003%, I said what we should be doing is, if you are living with your grandparents, lockdown, don't go to school. But if you are living with people who are low risk, and you yourself are low risk, we should have been letting those people sort of go about into society, keep the number stable, the number of ICU beds probably wouldn't have been needed, and then we'd be pushing towards herd immunity like Sweden has. Sweden has no mask mandates. They have no lockdowns. They have no social distancing measures anymore. Everyone just was told to act reasonable, and now the numbers are coming down because they did it. And we have this data, right? And now we have the expert. Now we even have the WHO. Even the WHO is coming out and saying lockdowns are ineffective. So all the listen to the expert, listen to the scientist people, it's now, whoa, don't do that. We just want lockdowns. We want fear. We want the curb money, whatever it is. So this is the most unscientific thing I've ever seen, these quarantine isolation sites. And we saw videos in the government, and the Canadian, when questioned in Parliament, the Liberals were saying, well, we got people, you know, traveling, coming in, and blah, blah, blah. So if these are two sort of lockdown problematic travelers, that is, again, the most unscientific thing, or like counter-scientific, or I don't even know the word. It's beyond dumb, because here's what you're doing. Do you remember the cruise ship that was quarantined at the beginning of the COVID outbreak? That cruise ship there? And then all the doctors are coming out and saying, actually, this is the worst thing to do, because you're basically creating an incubation site. You're recircling the air in the same place, which means the people who don't have it are much more likely to get it here. So what are you going to do? Take quarantine isolation sites? Like, it'd be one thing if the government was saying at the beginning of the outbreaks, you know what, we're going to build special quarantine COVID treatment centers because we don't want the COVID patients mixing with the regular patients in the hospital because we don't want someone going in for cancer surgery and getting COVID-19. Right? If you have COVID, we're going to build these COVID treatment centers that are sort of, you can understand that, right? Places where people can go for special COVID treatment because it's an infectious disease. That is understandable. But quarantine isolation sites, so you're going to quarantine a bunch of different people with COVID-19 all together, that just guarantees that everyone in those sites is going to end up getting COVID-19. And then if you're locking down other people who don't have it, these travelers, we don't know where they've been. Basically what you're doing then is you're taking travelers who you don't know where they've been and you're putting them in these quarantine isolation sites and pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to get COVID-19. So that's the science behind that. Now, I say all that's nonsense. I say the government's lying there. I say they're just building concentration camps because they're evil. And you know me, I've never been a QAnon guy. I've been pretty measured on this whole COVID-19 thing, but I am not measured when it comes to internment camps for Canadian citizens. Remember when we had to apologize to the Japanese for doing that? As we should have, because you can't do that. Right? It was wrong to intern the Japanese during World War II. It's wrong to intern Canadians during COVID-19. So what are these COVID sites even going to be for? Right? We're going to have 15 COVID sites, and the government of COVID and other related issues. So is it just for people with the virus, so a place they can go for treatment and not infect others? That's quasi-reasonable, still impractical because Canada's a large country and transporting people to these sites is impractical. If you just had every major city we're trying to build COVID treatment centers on the outskirts of every major city to reduce the risk of infecting people in hospital, that'd be one thing. But the fact that they have this so ambiguous, like, if I'm preaching against the government's handling of COVID-19 and they deem that to be a threat to the safety of the people, should I be quarantined? And it doesn't give an answer there. It's so ambiguous. You can't build concentration camps and have an ambiguous purpose for them because then they're going to turn into concentration camps. So we have the WHO, which has now said, the lockdowns are unscientific because we knew this is the flattening the curve. And we've said this from the beginning. This is even the mandate from the beginning. The flattening the curve, what it's supposed to do is it doesn't save any lives long term. What it does is it prevents an immediate spike. And then what happened in Italy, right? What happened in Italy is they didn't have the amount of respirators to deal with the population that got it. It was an aging population. Italians are very emotive and they hug a lot. It's a culture where diseases can transmit rather easily. And they didn't have the resources to handle it. And that was a problem. So that's why we did the 14 days. The 14 days has now turned into 6+ months. We're at 6 months now, half a year. It's 14 days has turned into 6 months. And we have literal concentration camps being built. Here's what I might want to start with, but think about this. How quickly can the Canadian government build something? 3 to 5 years? To build 15 concentration camps, how quickly can they build it? Now, the Nazis could build them quite quickly because they were a fascist government and they're like, we need to kill the Jews, and we need to kill the Poles, and we need to kill the gays, and we need to kill this, and we need to kill this, we need to kill this, Sieg Heil, let's march around Hugo Boss uniforms. Okay, we got that. But the Canadian government might be a lot of things, and Justin Trudeau is a lot of things. Efficient is not one of them, okay? No one will ever accuse me of accusing Justin Trudeau or the Canadian government of being efficient. So how long is it going to take to build these things? Do you think they can get 15 concentration camps, federal quarantine/isolation sites up and running within a few months to help with the COVID-19? Or are they going to build these over a year and are still planning on having coronavirus for another year? And if they're still planning on having coronavirus for another year, well, then this is ridiculous because you see what Sweden has done and how it has worked and how they do not have these mandates and how it took them less than a year. So if you're talking about anything if you have a plan to build concentration camps for COVID-19 that goes longer than 6 months, the amount of time that it clearly took Sweden to get this all under control without any of these ridiculous measures, well, then you're ascientific. And this has never been about listening to the scientists. This has always been about control. This is terrifying. And this is also a reason why I was so firmly against Aaron O'Toole. Okay? And I know this isn't Aaron O'Toole's idea, but Aaron O'Toole cannot be trusted because Aaron O'Toole lusts after power. Now, I've done a lot of research on O'Toole. I've talked to a lot of people who knew him in his time as a lawyer, his time as a politician. Aaron O'Toole, to his credit, okay, I'm not going to slander the guy here. Aaron O'Toole won't do what Trudeau does and enrich himself. Aaron O'Toole is not in politics to become a wealthy man. Aaron O'Toole is in politics to become the most powerful man in Canada. He lusts after power, not wealth. Trudeau lusts after both, O'Toole after one. But the power is more dangerous. Like, I do care that Trudeau's embezzling basically millions of dollars through his phony charitable stuff. And yes, that's bad, and it's corrupt, and it makes you disdainful of him. But the more dangerous thing to the country long term is the lusting after power. Like that's always the more dangerous thing. And this is what O'Toole is. And O'Toole has shown the willingness to cooperate and collaborate with any sort of extremist group that will, help him, get a few more votes, push him into the leadership role. Which is why I don't trust him here, because is Aaron O'Toole the type of guy who will dismantle these massive overreaches of government authority? Like, that's what we have to ask ourselves. And I get it, he's going to be better than Trudeau, okay? No one's going to be worse than Trudeau. And despite what I have against Aaron O'Toole, like, I'm not going to be a crazy person here saying he's the exact same as Trudeau. But what I will say is he does lust after power, just as Trudeau does. And on this one metric, this incredibly dangerous metric, he's a failure, an abject failure, and a danger because he'll do it from the other side of the aisle. He'll legitimize it from the conservative point of view. So, what choice do we, like, I mean, what are our options here as Canadians? This is legitimately terrifying, and we have no one in government who's going to stand up to this effectively, right? You think the NDP are going to finally back down? You think the NDP are really against concentration camps for people who disagree with them? This is Jagmeet Singh's whole thing. Jagmeet Singh has been, always wanting to throw people in jail for hate speech and nonsense like that. But this is essentially the hate speech jails. Like, I mean, can the government give a guarantee that healthy people will not be put in these quarantine isolation sites? That the person, who's the guy? Chris Sky, who's going to be like the first person arrested, and the RCP is going after him for violating the coronavirus lockdown laws. So Chris Sky is going around. He's the jack guy going at the anti-mask protests. I might not agree with all his positions. I've outlined my position on coronavirus. He's outlined his. What I will definitely say, though, is he should not be facing any legal repercussions for what he's doing. The RCMP shouldn't be after him, and he definitely should not be thrown in a concentration camp. I'm very against concentration camps. It's one of those don't do. And I know you're thinking, hey, I'm a big fan of the UN Human Rights Council, and they just put China in the Human Rights Commission, and they have lots of concentration camps, so concentration camps can't be that bad. And if that's your position, then good for you. You're officially part of the United Nations. But to recap, we have literal concentration camps being built by the government. Are they going to be built within the next 6 months? We have the government that's defying the science on coronavirus now. Now the experts are saying, lockdowns are inefficient. We've looked at it. It doesn't make sense. Why keep doing it? But we keep instituting more and more totalitarian measures to deal with it. It's ridiculous. Like, my grandmother is at a nursing home. Her nursing home was just put on lockdown again, even though there's 0 cases there. There's 0 cases, and they put an internal lockdown in. Like, they can't even go down and play bingo anymore. Like, they all have to be locked down in the rooms, and that's inhumane. Like, that's going to kill people. Like, her sister, who's 97, she's already, gone a bit demented during this whole thing because she's been socially isolated for 6 months. And now I might never see her again. Because you don't know who long it lasts, and if she makes it on the other side, how much of her is going to still be left on there? It's inhumane, and it's cowardly politicians who want power, who want excuses, and then on top of it, when they institute these new laws without thinking, then you have the lawyers getting involved and saying, to mitigate liability, you should just keep everyone in their own rooms. That way no one can sue you for getting coronavirus, right? It's inhumane. Lawyers, politicians, ugh, what the heck? What the hecking heck? Heck the what? What the heck?